Looking. Just look at me. He claimed that he was looking, but admitted that he was worried. The moment he said that, she moved her sword. With her energy, she performed the movement slowly, so that he could watch. It's all right, she said. And then, the giant spider in front of her just fell, perfectly split in half. The blow Dako used was a simple movement, from bottom to top. With that single cut, the protagonist was able to see the gigantic distance that existed between his level and hers. The spider just fell, with its body parts scattering everywhere. After seeing that, the protagonist started receiving a bunch of notifications for new concepts, so many that he started to get a headache. He had just understood super advanced techniques, and several other concepts had also leveled up. The power he saw was similar to what he felt in Ortima's force field. Trembling with a headache, he wondered how someone could put so much will into a sword. The concept was so deadly and so alive that it gave him chills. With his vision blurred, the girl suddenly approached and asked if he had watched her blow closely. He complained that she got too close, and she simply threw a violet sphere at him. With the sphere in his hand, he noticed that it was overflowing with energy. He was happy, but wondered if he should really keep it, since it was her who got it. Smiling, the girl said that it was his reward and that he shouldn't hesitate, he should just accept the gift. From a distance, Slight saw the two of them being all chummy and got furious, screaming at them to stop chatting and go help him. He had been stuck in those webs for a while and was very worried because Rukul, who was in berserker mode, had already defeated her spider and was now completely out of control. The protagonist looked at the young woman, scared. Seeing Slight's situation, Dako just commented, "He's a complete loser." Our hero knew that if they moved forward, they would be defeated in a second by the out-of-control girl. He looked back and stated that the only person who could deal with the situation was Dako. She didn't seem happy at all about having to solve all the group's problems again. Meanwhile, the completely out-of-control young woman began to look at the others. The protagonist tried to reason with Dako, asking for help, since that was a completely abnormal situation. Being insistent and with a good argument, she couldn't say no, but she did notice something. With that, she decided to move and started stretching. Seeing this, the protagonist got excited. Looking at him, she stated that she would keep the beast entertained, but in return, he should defeat the other spider. In the middle of the conversation, Dako interrupted what she was going to say and charged toward Ruchel, still provoking her with words to attract her more and more. She said she could have a real blast with that out-of-control girl, and the more she provoked her, the more Ruchel entered a state of blind fury. At least Dako got what she wanted. Ruchel charged at her with her claws, jumping off the dead spider. Dako simply dodged the first attack and jumped backward, continuing with the insults. With each of Ruchel's blows, she performed a simple move to deflect it. After several attacks, the girl hadn't managed to hit a single white hair on Dako. Now in the spot she wanted, Dako grabbed Ruchel's wrist and threw her to the ground. With the impact, a little reason returned to the young woman's head, but it still wasn't enough. Seeing this, Dako let her go and made a few more provocations, telling her to stop blindly attacking someone stronger and telling her to get up. She claimed that she would entertain her enough to keep her conscious. While listening to the young woman growling, the protagonist watched the two of them fight. Seeing that he was distracted, Dako scolded him, and with that, he materialized his sword to fight the spider. Even in front of that giant monster, Dako believed that he would be able to win if he had watched her blow correctly. He asked her what she was basing all that confidence on. At that moment, one of the spider's giant claws hit the ground, very close to the protagonist. He barely managed to dodge. Slight, from a distance, saw his friend almost get hit. Although the spider was very debilitated, it still underestimated his strength. Seeing that he was being provoked even by a spider, he got so annoyed that he gritted his teeth. Knowing what to do, he invoked Eva. This time, not just one chain appeared, but several along with various magical symbols. The chains tied up a large part of the spider, which showed all its dissatisfaction. Slight was surprised to see that his friend had managed to trap the monster. Dako also looked back for an instant, diverting her gaze from her own fight. The protagonist advanced with his sword against the chained spider, but not all of its legs were trapped. The ones that were free tried to attack him, but he dodged several times. With Eva's help holding most of the legs, and with the cutting and blood poison concepts on the sword, he was ready. He got as close as he could and, with hatred in his eyes, attacked the giant spider. The blow hit the target, but it wasn't strong enough to defeat it. Watching everything, Slight was skeptical, wondering why the attack had failed. Without much effort to deflect Ruchel, Dako watched the protagonist with her sharp eyes. He retreated a few feet, wondering why his attack had been so weak. Looking at the sword, he finally realized the blood poison hadn't been activated correctly. At that moment, the spider, which was already trapped, began to break the chains to free itself. It made sense for one of the abilities to have failed. After the spider freed itself, it was ready to attack. Immediately, it struck a blow with its huge legs, an attack that could have ended his trajectory right there. As the giant spider broke the chains and attacked the protagonist, raising a cloud of dust, Dako froze, leaving an opening to be attacked. However, when the dust settled, everyone could see the spider fallen on the ground, while the young man was holding his sword. Immediately after, the sword fell, and he also collapsed, exhausted. Caught by a mental exhaustion, he recalled what had just happened. As soon as the sword and the spider's leg met, he changed the angle of his attack at the last second. He was trembling as he recovered the sword, knowing that if he had taken the blow head-on, both he and the weapon would have been destroyed. He wondered how he managed to perceive the movement. For an instant, it seemed that a fraction of a second had turned into an eternity. It was then that a notification appeared. By dodging the attack, he had mastered the concept of flow. Understanding what happened made the protagonist struggle to get to his feet, praising his friend in his thoughts. As he approached the spider again, he understood that he wouldn't be able to perfectly imitate her swordsmanship, but he knew what he needed to do to improve. With his sword in hand, he faced the spider, challenging it. Sensing the hostility, it raised its legs to attack again, but this time, he swung the sword continuously, defending and deflecting the attacks. While watching, Slight remembered a swordsmanship concept called parrying, which involved deflecting or redirecting enemy attacks. If applied correctly, it could create an opening in the opponent's defense. Slight knew that this was just a tactical concept, and the reality was very different, but his friend seemed to be doing the impossible. Even without having experience, he was already showing an impressive ability. Watching how he dodged the attacks, Slight wondered if he had really never held a sword before. After deflecting another attack, the protagonist finally found the opening he was looking for. Using the deflection concept for frontal attacks and spinning the sword to defend against a side attack, he managed to continue advancing. Little by little, he began to see the path to victory. But there was another fight that was still dragging on, the girls. Ruchel was still out of control, but at one point, she was disarmed by tripping over Dako's feet, who calmly knocked her down. While she continued to watch the protagonist's fight, thinking that it was unbelievable, she thought he would learn something from her technique, but it was he who was showing her something new. She remembered that there was a martial art that used flow as its essence, but few people dared to use it, as it was an ability that required capturing a brief moment, something almost impossible, but she was watching the protagonist do it repeatedly. Now, it was the spider that was being pressured. The white-haired young woman knew that using this technique continuously was risky and required an enormous effort. That's why most people, like Slight, looked for easier techniques. But she always wanted to master the martial arts, and now she felt as if he was offering her that opportunity. While Dako was entertained, Ruchel got up again. In the meantime, already with a little reason, she took a few flicks while Slight asked to be freed. Dako didn't want to know about either of them, she just wanted to go back to watching the fight. She realized that just reflecting the attacks wouldn't be enough for him to win. At one point, gritting his teeth, the protagonist advanced toward the spider. Even being threatened by one of the legs, he continued his movement. Dako watched as he used the enemy's strength, spinning quickly and combining two abilities. And before her eyes, with the sword spinning in a horizontal movement from bottom to top, he managed to cut the giant spider. The blow was perfect and hit the target. The spider began to howl in pain. Watching the scene, Slight was speechless, while the white-haired young woman, slightly blushing, was thrilled with emotion, seeing the protagonist's success, who had overcome that arduous battle and now just watched the giant spider fall. With the defeat of the giant spider, its body slumped to the ground. Soon after, it was Ban Yunwan's turn, who also collapsed, defeated by the stress and fatigue of the battle. As the protagonist sighed, system notifications began to arrive, informing him that his external and internal concepts had been temporarily synthesized. He felt the great changes occurring in his internal code. At the same time, he heard the call from Slight, who was trapped in spiderwebs. The situation became complicated when Dako also asked for help to contain an uncontrollable wild beast. The protagonist felt overwhelmed. He had barely defeated an elite, and everyone was already trusting him to solve everything. Amidst the chaos, Slight explained that the webs required magic to be undone, while Dako warned about Ruchel's seemingly infinite stamina. Seeing the two of them arguing about who should be helped first, the protagonist had an idea. His solution was to absorb the concept of the web that was holding Slight. With that, he acquired the web concept, and immediately used it to feed the little Eva. Using this new power, he created net-shaped chains and threw them in Rukel's direction, immobilizing the uncontrollable girl on the ground. The protagonist then warned that it was impossible to break free, as the chains drained magic. As she writhed to escape, the chains pressed her body more and more until the scene made both he and Dako blush. Embarrassed, Slight quickly covered the protagonist's eyes, who was upset that he was the only one who couldn't see anymore. Although the situation had been resolved, the room transition didn't happen. The chains, however, worked, and Ruchel's hair began to return to its original pink color. The protagonist realized that his student ID was active again.